A cold businessman sees his routine change when he is approached by an unknown girl. Her simplicity breaks barriers that years of success had created. But an unexpected secret links that child to his past, and this encounter could transform everything he believed to be important. If this beautiful story of overcoming and love interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you are watching us from. Continuing, the afternoon fell heavily over Paulista Avenue, bringing with it that typical end-of-day movement that transformed the streets of São Paulo into a sea of horns and haste. Ricardo Almeida observed all of it from inside his office on the 23rd floor, his hands resting on the tempered glass desk, his eyes fixed on the lights that were beginning to turn on across the city. At 42 years old, he had achieved everything he once imagined: a prestigious construction company, apartments in noble neighborhoods, imported cars, and the respect that only money can buy. But that afternoon, as the sun hid behind the mirrored buildings, Ricardo felt a weight that no financial success could alleviate. The last few weeks had been especially difficult. An unexpected audit of the company's books revealed strange movements, transfers he hadn't authorized, contracts signed with suppliers he had never heard of. Someone within his own circle was playing against him, manipulating numbers, diverting resources. Ricardo knew this. What he didn't know yet was who, or rather, he suspected, but he didn't want to believe it. Vanessa, his partner of 3 years, had access to everything. She knew his passwords, participated in important meetings, signed documents in his name when he traveled. Could it be that she, the woman who shared his bed and his plans, was behind all of it? He loosened his Italian tie and took a deep breath. He needed to get out of there. He needed air, silence, anything other than those 4 walls filled with graphs and reports that only confirmed his suspicions. Ricardo grabbed his cell phone, ignored the 17 missed calls from Vanessa, and went down in the private elevator. The doorman greeted him with the usual reverence, but Ricardo barely responded. His head was far away, trapped in a labyrinth of doubts and disappointments. He walked aimlessly through the streets of Jardim Paulista, passing by designer stores, sophisticated restaurants, and luxury gyms. All of that was part of his world, but at that moment it seemed distant, empty, meaningless. He ended up sitting on a park bench, right in front of a small church he had never noticed before, despite passing by there almost every day. The noise of the city continued all around, but there, in that forgotten corner, there was a certain peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. That was when she appeared. A small girl, she must have been about 7 or 8 years old, brown hair tied in a simple ponytail, a light pink cotton dress that was already somewhat faded, but clean and well cared for. She carried a child's bag, the kind with butterfly drawings, and walked with slow steps, observing her surroundings with that typical childhood curiosity. When her eyes met Ricardo's, she stopped. She stood there for a few seconds, just looking, as if measuring whether or not she could approach. Ricardo frowned, bothered by the possibility of being approached, but something about that girl stopped him from getting up and leaving. She took a few steps toward him and stopped at a respectful distance, her hands tightly gripping the strap of the bag. "Good afternoon, mister." The voice was soft, polite, loaded with a delicacy that contrasted with the urban setting around them. Ricardo looked her up and down, trying to understand what a child was doing alone at that time, in that place. "Good afternoon," he replied, his voice coming out harsher than he intended. "Are you lost?" The girl shook her head no. "No, sir, I was just looking for a place to rest for a little bit. Can I sit here on the bench?" Ricardo was speechless for a moment. There was something unusual about the whole situation. The way she spoke, the excessive politeness for a child of her age, the serenity with which she presented herself. He looked around, searching for a responsible adult, but saw no one. Only hurried passers-by who barely paid attention to what was happening around them. "You can sit," he replied, moving over slightly to give her space. "Where are your parents?" The girl settled onto the bench, placing the bag on her lap carefully, as if she were carrying something very precious. "My mother is resting in a safe place. She had a little health problem, but the doctors are taking good care of her. I just need to wait until tomorrow morning to be able to see her again." Ricardo felt a pang in his chest. A little health problem. The way she said it with such naturalness, as if she were used to dealing with difficult situations, bothered him deeply. "And where are you going to stay until tomorrow?" She looked at him with those huge brown eyes, full of a confidence he couldn't understand. "I don't know yet, but God always takes care of me. He will send someone to help me." Ricardo almost laughed. Almost. But something in the sincerity of those words stopped him. He had stopped believing in God a long time ago, ever since he realized that success depended only on strategy, hard work, and the ability to step on others when necessary. But hearing that from a child, at that specific moment in his life, stirred something inside him that had been dormant for years. "What is your name?" he asked, still trying to understand the situation. "Sophia, and yours, sir?" "Ricardo Almeida." "Pleasure to meet you, Ricardo." The way she said his name without the last name, without the formality people used when they spoke to him, was strangely comforting. They sat there for a few minutes in silence. Sophia looked at the church ahead, swinging her little legs that didn't reach the ground, while Ricardo tried to process what was happening. He should get up and go. He should call someone, maybe Child Protective Services, the police, any responsible authority. But his feet seemed glued to the ground, and his mind, normally so quick at making decisions, was completely locked. "Are you hungry?" he asked suddenly, surprising himself. Sophia looked at him with a shy smile. "A little bit, yes, but I don't want to be a bother." "You're not being a bother. Come, let's go eat something." Ricardo stood up and Sophia followed him, tightly holding her little butterfly bag. They walked to a traditional bakery nearby, the kind with the smell of warm bread and freshly brewed coffee. Ricardo ordered sandwiches, orange juice, and a piece of chocolate cake. Sophia ate slowly, savoring every bite as if it were the most delicious thing in the world. She thanked him 3 times, wiped her mouth with the paper napkin, and drank the juice to the last drop. While she ate, Ricardo observed her. There was something about that girl that bothered him and fascinated him at the same time. The way she valued every detail, how she treated everything with such care, as if nothing was guaranteed. He tried to remember the last time he had felt genuine gratitude for something simple, but he couldn't. His life was made of planned achievements, purchased pleasures, strategic relationships. Nothing was spontaneous. Nothing was free. "Sophia, who is taking care of you while your mother is in the hospital?" The girl looked at the bag on her lap before answering. "I am taking care of myself. My mother taught me to be strong, to have faith, and to never give up. She always says that God has a plan for each of us, and that difficult things only happen to make us better." Ricardo swallowed hard. Those words, spoken with such conviction by a child who should be playing, studying, living without worries, cut deep. He thought of his own childhood, in a small town in the interior of Minas Gerais, where he had only the necessities but never lacked love. He thought of the mother who raised him alone after his father left them, working as a seamstress to ensure he could study. He thought of how he had left all of that behind when he moved to São Paulo in search of a better life, in search of success. And he thought of Helena. Helena. It had been so many years since he had allowed that name to echo in his mind. Helena, his youth sweetheart, the girl with the sweet smile who truly loved him, who dreamed of a simple life by his side. He left her. He chose the big city, business, money, and he never looked back. Ricardo's phone vibrated in his pocket. It was Vanessa again. He declined the call without answering and looked at Sophia, who was finishing the last piece of cake with a satisfied smile. "Sophia, where is this place where your mother is?" "At Hospital São Lucas in the East Zone. She stayed there because it's near where we live." The East Zone. A universe completely different from his own. Ricardo took a deep breath and made a decision he couldn't explain even to himself. "I'm going to take you there. You can't be on the street alone." Sophia looked at him with eyes full of light. "You would do that for me, sir?" "I would. Let's go." They left the bakery, and Ricardo called his private driver. While they waited for the car to arrive, he looked at that girl beside him. So small, so fragile, but at the same time so strong. And for the first time in many years, Ricardo Almeida felt like he was doing something that actually mattered. The black car stopped in front of them, and Ricardo opened the door, gesturing for Sophia to enter first. She looked at the interior of the vehicle with surprise, but entered carefully, holding her bag as always. Ricardo entered next and gave the address to the driver. As the car cut through the city toward the East Zone, Ricardo looked out the window, watching São Paulo change its face with every kilometer traveled. The mirrored buildings gave way to simpler constructions, designer stores were replaced by neighborhood markets, and traffic became more chaotic. But something inside him was changing too, something he couldn't name yet, but that was there, pulsing, alive, demanding attention. Sophia watched everything carefully, pointing once in a while to something that caught her attention. Ricardo watched her out of the corner of his eye, feeling a strange, inexplicable connection. There was something about that girl that touched him in a way he hadn't experienced in a long time. Maybe it was the purity, the unwavering faith, or simply the brutal contrast between her world and his. Or maybe it was something deeper, something his rational mind didn't want to accept yet. The traffic was heavy, and the trip that would normally take 40 minutes was already past an hour. Ricardo looked at Sophia, who was starting to close her little eyes, tired. He took off his blazer and placed it over her like a blanket. The girl smiled, thanked him quietly and snuggled into the leather seat, hugging her little bag. And as the car headed toward the unknown, Ricardo Almeida, the cold and calculating businessman, felt for the first time in years that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Hospital São Lucas rose discreetly among simple residential buildings and small shops in the east zone of São Paulo. It was an old building, with walls of a beige faded by time and a modest entrance that contrasted brutally with the private hospitals Ricardo was used to frequenting. When the car stopped in front of the main gate, Sophia opened her eyes and straightened up in the seat, adjusting her dress and holding her little bag with both hands. "We're here," she said, with that tone of voice that mixed relief and expectation. "Thank you for bringing me here, Mr. Ricardo. You are very kind." Ricardo got out of the car and helped Sophia out, holding her small hand for a few seconds before letting go. The driver stayed parked nearby, waiting for instructions. Ricardo looked at the building ahead, took a deep breath, and followed Sophia toward the reception. The entrance hallway smelled of disinfectant, mixed with reheated coffee. There were a few people sitting in blue plastic chairs, waiting for service or news of hospitalized relatives. Sophia walked with confidence, as if she knew every corner of that place. Ricardo followed her, feeling completely out of place in that environment. His expensive clothes, his Swiss watch, everything about him screamed that he didn't belong there. At the reception, a middle-aged nurse, hair tied in a tight bun and with deep circles under her eyes, looked at the two of them with curiosity. Sophia approached the counter and smiled. "Good evening, Aunt Marcia. I came to find out how my mother is." The nurse smiled back, but it was a tired, heavy smile. "Hi, Sophia, dear. Your mother is stable, sleeping now. The doctor came by earlier and said she is responding well to treatment, but you know you can only visit her tomorrow morning during the allowed hours." "I know, Aunt Marcia. I just wanted to be sure she is okay, and she is being cared for, isn't she?" "She is, my child. You can rest easy." The nurse then looked at Ricardo, evaluating him with that professional gaze that measures intentions in seconds. "And you are?" "Ricardo Almeida. I found Sophia on the street and brought her here. She told me her mother is hospitalized." The nurse frowned, clearly worried. "Sophia, were you on the street alone again? How many times have I told you to stay at Dona Celia's house when your mother can't be with you?" Sophia lowered her head, embarrassed. "Dona Celia is traveling to her daughter's house, remember? And I didn't want to be alone at home. I preferred to come be near my mother, even from a distance." Ricardo felt his chest tighten again. That girl, so small, dealing with all of that alone, having to make decisions that no child should have to make. He looked at the nurse and spoke with a voice firmer than he intended. "She can stay with me tonight. I will ensure she is safe and well cared for. Tomorrow morning I will bring her back to see her mother." The nurse looked at him with suspicion. "You understand that this is a big responsibility, right? It's not just anyone who can go around taking a child home." "I understand perfectly, and you can rest easy. I have no intention other than helping. If you'd like, I can leave my details, documents, whatever is necessary." The nurse still seemed hesitant, but Sophia spoke quietly. "Aunt Marcia, I trust him. He gave me food, he was kind to me, and he brought me here. You don't need to worry." Something in Sophia's voice convinced the nurse. She sighed and grabbed a pen. All right, but I'm going to need your ID, tax ID, and a contact number, and tomorrow morning you bring her here without fail. Ricardo handed over his documents, and the nurse noted everything on a form. Meanwhile, Sophia looked down the hallway that led to the patient rooms, as if she could see her mother through the walls. Ricardo noticed her gaze and placed his hand on her shoulder. Your mother is fine, Sophia. Tomorrow you will be able to see her. Sophia nodded, but her eyes were watery. Ricardo felt an uncontrollable urge to hug her, to protect her, to make everything all right. But he restrained himself. He was still a stranger to that girl, even if something inside him told him otherwise. They left the hospital and returned to the car. Ricardo gave instructions to the driver to take them to his apartment in Pinheiros. As they crossed the city again, Sophia looked out the window with a thoughtful expression, hugging her little bag against her chest. Sophia, can I ask you a question? You can, Mr. Ricardo. What do you have in that bag that is so important? Sophia looked at the bag as if deciding whether or not to reveal its contents. After a few seconds, she slowly opened the zipper and began to take out the objects, one by one, with all the care in the world. First, she showed a small children's Bible, with a pink synthetic leather cover and yellowed pages. My mother gave it to me on my 6th birthday. She reads to me every night before I sleep. Inside here are the most beautiful stories in the world. Then came a photo framed in a simple plastic frame. It was the image of a young woman with a sweet smile, hugging Sophia as a baby. This is my mother, Helena. She is the most beautiful and strongest person I know. Ricardo took the picture frame with trembling hands. Helena, that name he had tried to forget for so many years. He looked at the photo closely, and his heart almost stopped. The green eyes, the delicate smile, the way she held the baby. It was her. It was Helena. The Helena he had loved. The Helena he had left behind. Your mother's name is Helena? He asked, his voice coming out hoarse. Yes, Helena Costa. Why, Mr. Ricardo, do you know her? Ricardo couldn't answer immediately. His mind was in a whirlwind. Helena Costa. 20 years ago, when he still lived in Belo Horizonte, trying to build his first business, Helena was the municipal school teacher who supported him, who believed in him, who dreamed of a future together. They dated for 3 years, made plans, talked about marriage. But when the opportunity arose to move to São Paulo and work for a large construction company, Ricardo had to make a choice. Helena wanted to stay in Minas near her family at the school where she worked. He wanted to grow, conquer the world, make money. The argument was difficult, painful, and in the end he left alone, promising to return, promising they would find a way. But he never returned. He never looked for her again. He simply moved on, built his empire, and pretended that part of his life never existed. And now, 20 years later, he was holding a photo of Helena with a child in her arms. A child who, by the calculations his mind was quickly making, must have been born shortly after he left. Mr. Ricardo, are you okay? Sophia's voice brought him back to reality. I am, Sophia. I am. It's just that your mother reminds me of someone I knew a long time ago. Sophia smiled. My mother is truly unforgettable. Everyone who knows her says that. Ricardo returned the photo and Sophia tucked it back into the bag, along with her other little treasures. A rosary of blue beads, a notebook with her drawings, a colorful pebble she said she found on a special walk. Each object carried a story, a memory, a piece of a life he never knew. The rest of the trip was made in silence. Ricardo was lost in thought, trying to process everything. Was it possible that Sophia was his daughter? Did Helena never try to contact him? Or did she try and he simply ignored it, too busy with his meteoric rise in the business world? He remembered how many times he changed numbers, how many times he changed addresses without telling anyone from his past. He remembered how he cut all bridges with Belo Horizonte, as if that previous life were a mistake that needed to be erased. When they arrived at his apartment, a luxury penthouse with a view of the park, Sophia was impressed but not dazzled. She looked at everything with curiosity, but without that greed Ricardo saw in the eyes of so many people who visited his home. It was as if she were aware that it wasn't hers, but she also didn't feel envy or a need for it. Ricardo showed her the guest room, with its king-size bed, private bathroom and balcony with a panoramic view. Sophia placed her little bag on top of the dresser carefully and sat on the edge of the bed. "It's very pretty here, Mr. Ricardo. Do you live alone?" "I live with my girlfriend Vanessa, but she is away on a business trip," Ricardo replied, lying for the first time since meeting Sophia. The truth was that he had no idea where Vanessa was, and honestly, he didn't care at that moment. He prepared a light snack for the two of them, and they ate on the balcony watching the city lights. Sophia talked about school, about her friends, about the stories her mother told before bed. And the more she spoke, the more Ricardo was certain. That girl had his eyes, the same color, the same shape. She had Helena's smile, but the way she frowned when she was thinking was his. After the snack, Ricardo prepared the room for Sophia, put fresh towels in the bathroom, and set aside one of his t-shirts for her to use as pajamas. Sophia thanked him, said goodnight, and went to take a shower. While she was in the shower, Ricardo grabbed his cell phone and searched for the name Helena Costa on social media. It took a few minutes, but he finally found a profile. Photos were scarce. Most recent ones showed her with Sophia on small outings, simple smiles, a life that was modest but full of love. There was no mention of any husband, no father for Sophia. Ricardo's heart beat so hard he could hear it. When Sophia came out of the shower, wearing his t-shirt that went down to her knees, her hair still damp, she approached Ricardo with her children's Bible in her hands. "Mr. Ricardo, can you read a story to me? My mother always reads before I go to sleep." Ricardo took the book with unsure hands. It had been so long since he touched a Bible, so long since he thought about faith, about purpose, about anything beyond the material. He opened to a random page and began to read, his voice coming out hesitant at first, but steadying as the words flowed. It was the story of the prodigal son, the one who left, spent everything, and returned repentant, being received with open arms by his father. When he finished, Sophia was almost asleep, her little eyes heavy. Ricardo carried her to the bed, covered her with the soft duvet, and stood there, looking at that serene little face. "Mr. Ricardo," she whispered, already half asleep, "thank you for taking care of me today. I knew God would send someone special." And before he could respond, she was already asleep, her breathing peaceful, her small hand holding the Bible against her chest. Ricardo left the room and went to the balcony, needing air. He looked at the city below, at all those lights, all that movement, all that he had achieved. And for the first time in his life, all of it seemed insignificant compared to what he might have lost. Ricardo could barely sleep that night. He stayed on the balcony until almost dawn, his mind running in circles, trying to piece together a puzzle he had ignored for 20 years. Every detail Sophia had shared, every gesture, every word, everything pointed to a single conclusion he didn't yet have the courage to fully accept. At 5 in the morning, he finally went inside, took a cold shower, and made coffee. He needed to be lucid for what was coming. Sophia woke up shortly after 6, already dressed and with her little bag slung over her shoulder, anxious to see her mother. Ricardo prepared a simple breakfast, bread and butter, orange juice and fruit. She ate with the same care as always, thanking him for everything, treating everything as if it was special. While she drank her juice, Ricardo's phone vibrated insistently on the table. It was Vanessa, for the 15th time since yesterday. He answered more out of reflex than actual will. "Vanessa," he said, his voice tired. "Ricardo, finally, where were you? I called 1,000 times, went to the office, to the apartment. Nobody knew where you were." Her voice came out high-pitched, too nervous to be just concern. "I had to resolve an urgent personal matter. I couldn't answer." "Personal matter? What personal matter, Ricardo? We don't have secrets, remember? You completely disappeared. And there's that meeting this morning with the auditors, you can't miss it." "I'm going to be a little late. I have something important to do first." "More important than saving your company." "Ricardo, you're acting very strange. What is going on?" Ricardo looked at Sophia, who was pretending not to hear but was clearly paying attention. "I'll explain later, Vanessa. I have to hang up now." "No, Ricardo, wait. We need to talk about the contracts I signed yesterday. There are some things that—" "What contracts?" There was a silence on the other end of the line. Then Vanessa's voice returned, more controlled, more calculated. "The contracts you asked me to sign, remember? With that new cement supplier." Ricardo closed his eyes. He had never asked her to sign any contract, never. Vanessa, I didn't ask you to sign anything. What supplier is this? Another silence. When she spoke again, there was a clear tension in her voice. We'll talk in person, this isn't a topic for the phone. Did you sign contracts in my name without my authorization? Ricardo, you're scaring me. You always trust me with these things. Why is it different now? Because now I'm paying attention, Vanessa, and I don't like what I'm seeing. He hung up before she could respond. His hands were shaking, not from anger, but from a sudden clarity that hit him like a punch. Vanessa was behind everything. The strange movements, the unauthorized contracts, the audit that found irregularities. She was using the access he had given her in trust to sabotage his own company, likely planning to take everything. In the past, he would have exploded. He would have rushed to the office. He would have taken drastic and immediate measures. But something in him was different. Something that had to do with the girl sitting in front of him, eating bread and butter and trusting him. Sophia noticed his closed expression. Is everything okay, Mr. Ricardo? Everything is fine, Sophia. Just work problems, nothing you need to worry about. She nodded and drank the last sip of juice. Can we go see my mother now? Yes, we can. Let's go. The path to the hospital was faster in the morning. Ricardo took the opportunity to call his lawyer and request an urgent analysis of all contracts signed in the last 6 months. He also requested they check for unauthorized access to the company's accounts and block any movement Vanessa might try to make. Everything calmly, without fanfare, but with firmness. It was a new way of dealing with conflict, a way he was learning from that child beside him who faced her own challenges with such serenity. When they arrived at the hospital, the same nurse from the night before was leaving her shift. She smiled upon seeing Sophia and waved. Your mother is already awake, dear. She had a peaceful night. You can go up to visit her. Sophia ran through the hallways, Ricardo trying to keep up with her pace. She stopped in front of a room on the 2nd floor, took a deep breath as if preparing herself, and then opened the door slowly. The woman lying in the hospital bed turned her head when she heard the door open, and Ricardo felt the world stop. It was Helena, older with a few strands of grey hair that didn't exist 20 years ago, with expression lines around the green eyes he had loved so much. But it was her, unmistakably her. Mommy! Sophia ran to the bed and hugged Helena carefully, trying not to hurt her. I missed you so much. Helena hugged her back, her eyes filling with tears. My daughter, my love, are you okay? Where did you sleep yesterday? I slept at the house of a very nice friend who helped me. He gave me food, brought me here, and took good care of me. It was only then that Helena looked toward the door and saw Ricardo standing there completely still, unable to move or speak. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened in silent shock, and for a few seconds, neither of them could say anything. Ricardo, she whispered finally, her voice trembling. Helena, was all he could manage to say. Sophia looked from one to the other, confused. Do you know each other? Helena wiped her face, drying the tears that were already starting to fall. We do, my child. We've known each other for a long time. Ricardo took a few steps toward the bed, every movement heavy, loaded with years of absence and regret. Helena, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. She looked away, the pain evident in every feature of her face. Didn't know what, Ricardo? That I kept living after you left? That I had to move on alone? That you were pregnant? That I had a daughter? The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia looked from her mother to Ricardo, trying to process what she was hearing. Helena closed her eyes, and new tears flowed. I tried to tell you, Ricardo. I called dozens of times in that first year. I sent letters, messages. I tried to find you in São Paulo. But you had completely vanished. You changed your number, your address. You cut contact with everyone from Belo Horizonte. It was as if you had erased your previous life, and after a while I simply gave up. I thought you didn't want to know, that you had chosen your new life, and that we weren't part of it. Ricardo felt his legs weaken. He leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. Helena, I'm so sorry. I was so focused on winning, on building my career, that I closed myself off to everything and everyone. I didn't realize how much I was losing, how much I was leaving behind. And you really did lose, Ricardo. You lost every moment. The first ultrasound, the birth, the first steps, the first word, everything. I raised our daughter alone, with the help of my mother and good people God placed in my path. But you were never here." Sophia, who had been quiet until then, spoke softly. "Mommy, so Mr. Ricardo is my father?" Helena looked at her daughter with a mixture of love and sadness. "He is, my child, he is." Sophia turned to Ricardo, those huge brown eyes seeking confirmation. Ricardo knelt by the bed, getting down to the girl's level, and for the first time in decades, allowed the tears to fall freely. "Sophia, I didn't know. If I had known I would have come back, I would have been here, and I know I can't get back the lost time, but I want to try. I want to be present now, if you and your mother will let me." Sophia looked at him for a long moment, studying his face, trying to find something to help her decide. Then, with the same confidence she showed when she approached him on the park bench, she reached out and touched Ricardo's face. "I always wanted to have a father," she whispered. "I always asked God to send me one. And yesterday, when I saw you sitting on that bench, I felt it was you. I didn't know you were my real father, but I felt you were special." Ricardo could no longer contain himself. He hugged Sophia with all the strength he had, feeling the weight of 20 years of absence, but also the hope of a future that could be different. Helena cried silently in the bed, watching father and daughter together for the first time. After a few minutes, Ricardo stood up and looked at Helena. "I know you have no reason to give me a second chance. I failed you, I failed our daughter, I failed as a man, but I've changed, Helena. Or rather, I am changing. And if you'll let me, I want to take care of both of you. I want to be present, I want to be the father Sophia deserves, and the man you deserve to have by your side 20 years ago." Helena wiped her eyes with the edge of the hospital sheet. "Ricardo, it's not that simple. You can't simply show up after 20 years and expect everything to go back to how it was." "I know, and I don't expect that. I only hope for an opportunity, to prove that I can be different, to be here for real." Before Helena could respond, the room door opened and a doctor entered, followed by a nurse. He looked at Ricardo with curiosity, but focused his attention on Helena. "Good morning, Donna Helena. I've come to discharge you. The tests showed that you are recovering well from the accident. The bruising is decreasing, and there is no more risk, but you need absolute rest for the next 2 weeks and regular medical follow-up." Helena nodded, relieved. "Thank you, doctor. I will follow all the recommendations." The doctor handed over a prescription and some written instructions, wished her well, and left. Ricardo looked at Helena. "Where are you going when you leave here?" "Home. My mother lives with me. She will help me." "And where is your home?" "In Villa Esperanza, East Zone. 3 rooms, rent that fits a teacher's salary." Ricardo took a deep breath. "Come with me, you and Sophia. Come to my apartment until you recover completely. I have space, I have resources, I have everything you need. And I want to be close. I want to help." Helena looked him in the eyes, searching for sincerity, searching for guarantees she knew didn't exist. "Ricardo, I don't know if it's a good idea." "Mommy, please," Sophia intervened. "Let Mr. Ricardo help. His house is very nice and he was very kind to me. And if he is my real father, then we should try, right?" Helena looked at her daughter, at that hopeful little face, and felt her heart break and rebuild at the same time. "All right, but only until I recover. After that, we'll see how things stand." Ricardo nodded, grateful. It was more than he deserved, and he knew it. "I will arrange everything, proper transportation, a private doctor to follow your recovery, everything you need." While the nurse helped Helena prepare for discharge, Ricardo left the room to make some calls. He organized transportation with a private ambulance, contacted a renowned trauma specialist to take over Helena's follow-up, and sent a message to his housekeeper asking her to prepare 2 additional rooms in his apartment. And then, for the first time since he woke up that morning, he allowed a different emotion to take hold of him. It wasn't just regret or guilt. It was hope. The real possibility of starting over, of being a father, of perhaps recovering a part of himself he had lost so long ago. When he returned to the room, Sophia was helping her mother put on her shoes. Helena looked at him, and for a brief moment, Ricardo saw something different in her eyes. It wasn't love, not yet. Maybe it never would be again. But it was an opening, a small sliver of light indicating that despite everything, perhaps there was a path. The arrival of Helena and Sophia at Ricardo's apartment was marked by a mix of hope and tension. The private ambulance stopped in front of the luxury building in Pinheiros, and Ricardo accompanied every step of Helena's transfer, from the stretcher to the wheelchair he had provided. She was weak but insisted on walking alone to the elevator, supported only by Ricardo and the nurse he had hired for the first days of recovery. Sophia, for her part, carried her little bag and watched everything with those curious eyes but without losing her composure. When they entered the apartment, Ricardo's employee, Donna Marta, had already prepared everything according to instructions. 2 adjacent rooms, one for Helena with an adjustable hospital bed, another for Sophia with softer and more welcoming decor. There were fresh flowers in vases, clean sheets smelling of lavender, and a small table with fruit and mineral water. Helena was taken to her room and helped into bed. The doctor Ricardo had hired, Dr. Henrique Sampaio, arrived minutes later to perform the first evaluation. He examined Helena carefully, checked the tests she brought from the hospital, and prescribed a routine of medication and light physical therapy. "You were lucky, Donna Helena. The accident could have been much worse, but with proper rest and the right care in 2 or 3 weeks, you will be completely recovered." Helena thanked him with a tired smile. After the doctor left, she looked around the room at that environment so different from what she was used to. Everything was impeccable, silent, organized, so distant from her reality as a public school teacher, with tight bills at the end of the month, patched-up furniture, and appliances that were always breaking. Ricardo appeared at the bedroom door with a cup of tea. "I brought chamomile. I thought it would help you relax." Helena took the cup, her hands shaking slightly. "Thank you. You didn't have to do all this, Ricardo." "I did, and I want to." He pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. "Helena, I know that 20 years don't disappear overnight. I know I hurt you, that I abandoned you at the moment you needed me most, but I want to change that. I want to be present now." Helena took a sip of the tea, her eyes fixed on the cup. "Ricardo, the issue isn't just you wanting to, it's whether you actually can. Because Sophia has already suffered from absences. Her mother, me, I always had to work hard to give her a minimum of dignity. We never had luxury, but she never went without. And she learned to be strong, to trust in God, to live with simplicity. But she always asked about her father. She always wanted to know why you weren't there. And I never knew what to answer. I will be here now, Helena. Not as someone who wants to buy her love with money or gifts, but as a father, as someone who wants to truly know her, participate in her life, be present for the important moments and the unimportant ones too." Before Helena could respond, Sophia came running into the room, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mommy, Mommy, the room Mr. Ricardo prepared for me has a huge bed and a window where you can see the whole city. And Donna Marta made chocolate cake." Helena smiled, touching her daughter's face with tenderness. "That's good, my child. Go on, eat a little piece of cake, but don't overdo it, okay?" Sophia went off skipping, and Ricardo stood watching the door through which she had passed. "She is incredible, Helena. The way she faces everything, the faith she has, the maturity. You did a wonderful job raising her." "I did the best I could, alone but with a lot of love. And now you are not alone anymore, neither you nor her." The following days were a time of adaptation. Helena strictly followed the medical guidelines, resting and allowing the nurse and Donna Marta to take care of everything. Sophia, for her part, began to explore her new temporary reality. Ricardo organized his schedule to spend as much time as possible at home, delegating meetings and resolving urgent company matters via video conference. The situation with Vanessa reached a breaking point on the 3rd night. She showed up at the apartment without warning, using the key Ricardo had given her months ago. She walked into the living room as if she owned the place, her high heels clicking on the marble floor, her designer bag hanging on her arm. "Ricardo, finally. You don't answer my calls, you don't respond to messages, you've vanished from the office. What is going on?" Ricardo was on the balcony, talking to Sophia about stars and constellations. He stood up upon hearing Vanessa's voice and entered the living room. Vanessa stopped when she saw Sophia, her forehead furrowing in confusion. "Who is this child and why is she here?" "This child has a name, it's Sophia, and she is here because she is my daughter." The silence that followed was thick. Vanessa blinked several times as if she hadn't understood correctly. "Your daughter? What do you mean, your daughter? You never mentioned having a daughter." "Because I didn't know I had one. Until 2 days ago, I didn't know she existed." Vanessa let out a nervous, humorless laugh. You're joking, right? Is this some kind of fidelity test? Because if it is, it's not funny, Ricardo. It's not a joke, Vanessa. And it's not about you, it's about me, about my past, and about the choices I made. Sophia is my daughter. She and her mother are going to stay here until Helena recovers completely. Helena? There's a Helena too? Vanessa was starting to lose her composure, her voice rising in pitch. Ricardo took a few steps toward her, his voice firm but controlled. Vanessa, I think we need to talk, but not here, not now, and not in front of Sophia. Oh, now you worry about the sensitivity of a child you met 2 days ago? And what about me, Ricardo? 3 years together, 3 years building a life, planning a future, and you simply decide you have a secret family, and they are the priority now. Sophia was standing at the balcony door, watching everything with frightened eyes. Ricardo noticed and signaled to Donna Marta, who appeared quickly and took Sophia to her room. Only when the girl was out of earshot did Ricardo turn his attention back to Vanessa. You want to talk about building a life together? Then let's talk about the contracts you signed without my authorization, about the suspicious bank movements, about the attempt to transfer company assets to offshore accounts that I never authorized. Vanessa's face turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I know you do, Vanessa. My lawyer already has all the proof. You used the access I gave you in trust to try to rob me, and the worst part is that I probably would have never noticed if it weren't for this random audit. Ricardo, you're getting it all wrong. Those contracts were to protect the company. I was trying to help you. Help by transferring millions to accounts that have nothing to do with the company. Help by signing agreements with shell suppliers. Vanessa, spare me. She took a few steps back, the mask of fragility falling completely. Do you know what it's like to be Ricardo Almeida's girlfriend? Living in your shadow, always being seen as the gold digger who is with you for the money. I worked hard to help you build this empire. I deserved a piece of it. You deserved honesty, respect, and a real relationship, just as I deserved the same from you. But neither of us gave that to the other, Vanessa. We were together for convenience, for appearances, but it was never true love. And now you're going to tell me you love this Helena you abandoned 20 years ago. Is this your great redemption? I don't know if I love Helena. I don't know if she will forgive me or if we'll be able to build anything. But I know I have a daughter who deserves to have a present father, and I know I don't want to live a life based on lies and power games anymore. Vanessa grabbed her bag and walked toward the door. You're going to regret this, Ricardo. You're going to realize you're trading a real, built life for a fantasy of redemption that will never work. Maybe, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. She slammed the door as she left, and the sound echoed through the apartment. Ricardo stood there for a few minutes, processing everything. Then he heard light footsteps behind him. It was Helena, leaning against the wall, wearing a simple robe. I heard part of the conversation, she said softly. It wasn't my intention to eavesdrop, but the voices were loud. It's okay. She needed to hear the truth, and I needed to speak it. Did you really break up with her because of us? I broke up with her because I realized our relationship was empty. You two just accelerated a decision that should have been made a long time ago. He looked at Helena, at that face that still carried the serene beauty he loved 20 years ago. And because I realized I spent 20 years trying to fill a void that only existed, because I was too cowardly to fight for what actually mattered, Helena looked away, her emotions clearly conflicting. Ricardo, I don't want you to stay with me out of guilt or obligation, and I don't want Sophia to grow up thinking she has a father who is only here because he feels indebted. I'm not here out of guilt, Helena. I'm here because I want to be, because I look at Sophia and see the most incredible person I've ever met, because I look at you and see the woman I should have never let leave, and because, for the first time in 20 years, I feel like I'm doing something right. The following days were filled with discoveries. Ricardo began to participate actively in Sophia's routine. He took her to school in the morning, helped with homework in the afternoon, and they ate dinner together every night. He learned that she loved to draw, that she was afraid of thunder, that her favorite ice cream was strawberry, and that she dreamed of being a veterinarian when she grew up. Helena watched all of this from a distance, still guarded in her protections, but slowly allowing Ricardo to draw near. They talked about the past, about the choices they made, about the 20 lost years. It wasn't easy, and many times the conversations ended in tears and heavy silences. But there was progress. There was construction. One night, after Sophia was already asleep, Ricardo and Helena were on the balcony watching the city lights. Helena broke the silence first. "You know, Sophia has been asking about you since she learned to speak. She saw the fathers of her little friends at school and always wanted to know why hers wasn't there. And I never knew what to say. How do you explain to a child that her father chose another life?" "I didn't choose, Helena. I fled. Fled from responsibilities, from feelings, from everything that was real. I built an empire of concrete and glass because it was easier than building a real family." "And now, what are you building now?" Ricardo looked at her, and for the first time in a long time allowed himself to be completely vulnerable. "I'm trying to build a second chance. For me, for you, for Sophia. I don't know if it will work. I don't know if you will be able to forgive me. But I need to try because this girl, our daughter, showed me that there is still goodness in the world, and that maybe I still deserve to be a part of it." Helena didn't respond immediately, but when she finally looked at Ricardo, there was something different in her eyes, something that looked very much like hope. The following weeks brought changes Ricardo never imagined possible. His life, previously measured in profits and losses, was now punctuated by small moments that were worth more than any million-dollar contract. The alarm clock rang earlier, not for business meetings, but to prepare Sophia's breakfast and ensure she arrived at school on time. Afternoons were reserved for helping her with math and Portuguese homework, discovering she had a knack for numbers but struggled with writing. And nights previously filled with business dinners and social events were now sacred moments of bedtime stories and conversations about dreams and fears. Helena continued her recovery, gaining strength every day. Dr. Henrique was impressed with the speed of her improvement and attributed it not only to medical care, but to the environment of peace and security she finally had. Physical therapy sessions happened 3 times a week, and Ricardo made a point of being present for all of them, supporting her, encouraging her, showing that he was there for whatever was necessary. It was on a Thursday afternoon, while Sophia was in art class at school, that Helena and Ricardo had the conversation they had both been postponing. They were in the living room, she on the sofa with a blanket over her legs, he sitting in the armchair across from her, when Helena finally said what had been stored up for days. "Ricardo, I need you to understand one thing. All of this here, this life, this apartment, this security, it's wonderful, but it's not my reality. It's not who I am. I am a public school teacher who lives in a simple neighborhood and who never had much beyond the necessities. And I raised Sophia to value what is true, not what is expensive. I know that, Helena, and that is exactly what makes me admire you even more. You raised an incredible girl with limited resources while I spent 20 years accumulating wealth but losing my humanity. But do you understand what I'm saying? When I fully recover, I'm going back to my house, to my life, and Sophia is going with me." Ricardo felt his heart tighten. He knew that moment would come, but he wasn't prepared to face it. "Helena, I'm not asking you to change who you are, nor for Sophia, but I am asking to let me be part of your lives. Not here, not in my world, but in your world. I want to be present on weekends, at school meetings, at birthdays. I want to be a real father, not an occasional visitor who sends money and thinks that solves everything. And your work, your company, your lifestyle. How are you going to reconcile all that?" "I'm already reconciling it. I spent the last week completely reorganizing my routine. I delegated responsibilities, hired an operational CEO to handle the day-to-day of the company, and established clear limits between work and personal life. Things I never thought were possible, but that became essential." Helena observed him in silence, searching for sincerity, searching for guarantees she knew didn't exist. "And Vanessa, did you resolve that situation?" "My lawyer is taking care of everything. She is going to return what she took from the company and sign a non-compete agreement. There won't be a criminal case because deep down she was also a victim of a system I created, a system based on appearances and conveniences, but it's resolved." "And as for us, do you have any expectations regarding me, Ricardo? Because I need you to understand that we are no longer those young people from 20 years ago. I've changed. You've changed, and I don't know if there is room for anything beyond being Sofia's parents together." Ricardo stood up and walked to the window, watching the city below. "I don't have expectations, Helena. Only hope. Hope that maybe, with time, we can discover who we are now, not as we were, but as we have become, and see if there is something there worth exploring." Before Helena could respond, the apartment door opened and Sofia came running in, waving a paper in her hand. "Dad! Mom! Look what I got at school!" It was the first time Sofia called Ricardo Dad without the Mr. in front of it. His heart almost exploded with emotion. He knelt to get to her level. "What is it, daughter?" "I won the prize for the best drawing in class. The teacher said I have a lot of talent and that I should keep practicing." Ricardo took the drawing and felt his eyes fill with tears. It was a portrait of 3 people holding hands under a rainbow, a woman, a man, and a girl between them. In the corner, written in careful, childish script, "My family." "It's beautiful, Sofia, the most beautiful I've ever seen." Helena was also moved seeing the drawing. "My daughter, you have incredible talent. I am very proud of you." That night, after Sofia slept, Ricardo and Helena stayed in the living room talking until late, not about the past or future plans, but about the present, about how Sofia was adapting to the new dynamic, about the challenges at school, about small, everyday things that before seemed irrelevant but were now everything. It was during one of these conversations that Helena finally lowered her guard a bit. "Ricardo, do you know why I never married? Why I never found anyone after you?" He shook his head no, afraid to interrupt her. "Because a part of me, as much as I tried to deny it, still loved you, or rather loved the memory of what we were, and no man who appeared in my life could compete with that memory. As much as I tried to move on, something always pulled me back to those 3 years we spent together in Belo Horizonte. Helena, Let me finish." She took a deep breath. "But the truth is that the person I loved no longer exists. That young Ricardo, a dreamer, full of plans but still humble, that Ricardo died when you boarded that bus to São Paulo. And the man you became, that cold and calculating businessman, wasn't someone I could love." She paused and looked directly into his eyes. "But this Ricardo who is here now, the one who wakes up early to make breakfast for Sofia, who helps with homework, who cries when she calls him Dad, that one I don't know very well yet. And maybe, just maybe, that is someone I can learn to love again." Ricardo felt his throat tighten. "I want to be that man, Helena. Not for you, not for Sofia, but for myself, because I lost myself on the way. I forgot who I was, and I need to find myself again." The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Helena received a full medical discharge and, as promised, began making plans to return to her house in Villa Esperança. But something had changed. Ricardo was no longer the man she left 20 years ago, nor the cold businessman she imagined he had become. He was something new, something in the making. One Saturday morning, Ricardo woke up with an idea. He prepared breakfast for everyone, and when Sofia and Helena were sitting at the table, he made an announcement. "I have a proposal to make. You both can say no, and I will respect that completely. But before you go back to Villa Esperança, I would like to take you somewhere." "Where?" asked Sofia, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Belo Horizonte, the city where it all began. Where I met your mother, where we were happy before I ruined everything. I want to show you where you came from, Sofia, and I want to go back there with you too. Not as the rich businessman from São Paulo, but as Ricardo. Just Ricardo." Helena was surprised. "You want to go back to Belo Horizonte?" "I do. I want to visit the places we used to go. I want to introduce Sofia to my mother, who still lives there and doesn't even know she has a granddaughter. I want to retrace steps I took wrong, and this time, do it differently." Sofia jumped from her chair. "I want to meet my grandmother, please, Mom, let's go." Helena looked at her daughter, then at Ricardo, and finally nodded. "All right, let's go." The trip was scheduled for the following weekend. Ricardo organized everything, but this time not in private jets or five-star hotels. They went by car, stopped at roadside diners, and stayed in a simple but comfortable hotel in downtown Belo Horizonte. It was a way for Ricardo to show he was willing to live differently, that luxury was no longer his priority. When they arrived at the simple house in the Santa Efigenia neighborhood, where Ricardo's mother still lived, a white-haired lady with a sweet smile opened the door. She looked at the son she hadn't seen in nearly 10 years, at the woman beside him, and at the girl holding hands with both of them. And then, as only mothers know how to do, she understood everything without anyone needing to explain. "Ricardo, my son, you finally came home." "I'm back, Mom, and I brought your granddaughter with me." The lady knelt in front of Sophia, tears flowing freely. "What is your name, my beautiful girl?" "Sophia, Grandma. My name is Sophia." And there, in that simple house, with the smell of corn cake and fresh coffee, Ricardo felt he was finally where he was supposed to be. Not at the top of a skyscraper in Sao Paulo, but on the ground, with his feet firm on the earth, surrounded by the people who truly mattered. That weekend was transformative. Ricardo showed Sophia the places of his childhood, the square where he played ball, the school where he studied, the church where his mother still went every Sunday, and in each place he told stories, shared memories, reconnected with parts of himself he had buried long ago. Helena watched everything with emotion. Seeing Ricardo like this, vulnerable and genuine, stirred feelings she was certain were dead. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they were just sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake up. On the last day in Belo Horizonte, Ricardo took Helena and Sophia to a small lookout at the top of a hill, with a view of the entire city. It was their favorite place when they were dating, where they made plans for the future, where they dreamed together. "I used to come here with your mother," Ricardo told Sophia. "We spent hours talking about what we wanted from life, about our dreams." "And what did you dream about?" asked Sophia. Helena answered, her voice choked with emotion. "We dreamed of simple things, a house, a family, jobs that fulfilled us, nothing too grand, just happiness." Ricardo looked at Helena. "And I was stupid enough to think I needed more than that. I thought I needed success, money, recognition. But now I understand that everything I ever needed was right here." He took Helena's hand cautiously, expecting her to pull away, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she intertwined her fingers with his and squeezed back. And there at the top of that hill, with the city at their feet and Sophia between them, the three stood in silence, just feeling the moment. A moment of starting over, of healing, of hope. 6 months had passed since that unexpected encounter on the park bench. 6 months that completely transformed the lives of Ricardo Almeida, Helena Costa, and especially Sophia. The girl who once carried her butterfly bag as her only refuge now had a safe home, a complete family, and a future drawn in brighter colors. Helena had returned to her house in Villa Esperanza, but now that house was no longer Sophia's only home. The girl divided her time between the simplicity of the East Zone, where her mother continued working as a teacher, and the apartment in Pinheiros, where her father waited for her every weekend with special plans and great dedication. Ricardo learned to move between these two worlds, discovering that true luxury was not in the expensive objects he had accumulated, but in Sophia's laughter when he tried to help her assemble puzzles, or in the way she held his hand during walks in the park. The company continued to prosper, but now under a more balanced management. Ricardo had delegated a good part of the operations to competent professionals and remained involved only in the most important strategic decisions. He discovered that working less didn't mean producing less, but rather living more. The meetings that once consumed his nights and weekends now happened at civilized hours, and he established a non-negotiable rule. Nothing, absolutely nothing, was more important than his commitments to Sophia. On a Sunday afternoon, while Sophia played in the park with other children, Ricardo and Helena sat on a bench, watching her from afar. It was the same type of bench where it had all begun, but now the context was completely different. There was no more fear, no more doubt. There was only the tranquility of someone who finally found his place in the world. "Do you notice how she's grown in these months?" Helena said, a soft smile on her face. "She's more confident, happier. She was always a strong girl, but now she has a lightness I didn't see before. It's because she doesn't have to carry everything alone anymore. She has 2 parents now, dividing the weight and multiplying the love." Helena looked at Ricardo, studying his profile. "You've changed so much, Ricardo. Sometimes I look at you and I'm still surprised. The man who left 20 years ago didn't come back. Someone better came back." He took her hand, a gesture that had become natural over the months. I had to lose myself completely to be able to find myself again, and it was Sophia who showed me the way. That small girl, with her unwavering faith and her silent courage, taught me more about life in a few hours than 20 years of success ever taught me. And what did you learn? I learned that wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in sincere hugs. That success isn't at the top of a building, but in the ability to be present in simple moments. That family isn't about DNA or obligation, but about choice and daily commitment. And I learned that it's never too late to start over, as long as we have the courage to admit our mistakes and the humility to change. Helena squeezed his hand back. Do you know what I learned? That forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but it means giving a chance for something new to be born. For years I carried resentment, heartache, the feeling of abandonment. But when I saw you with Sophia, when I realized your transformation was genuine, I understood that holding onto a grudge only hurts the one holding it. Letting go is liberating. Have you truly forgiven me, Helena? She thought for a moment before answering. I am learning to forgive. Every day a little more, and you know what helps me? Seeing the father you are being to Sophia. Seeing the effort you make. Seeing that you are truly present, not just physically but emotionally. That heals wounds I thought would never close. Sophia ran toward them, her hair flying in the wind, her face flushed from playing so much. Dad, Mom, let's get ice cream, please. Ricardo picked her up, even though she was already getting too big for it, and spun her in the air. Of course we will. What flavor do you want today? Strawberry. What about you guys? Helena and Ricardo looked at each other and laughed. We want the same as you, my daughter. Always. They walked through the neighborhood streets, the three of them holding hands, stopping at a traditional ice cream parlor that Sophia loved. While she savored her strawberry cone, Ricardo watched that scene with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. 6 months ago, he was sitting alone on a bench, lost in conflict and disappointment. Now, he was there, with a family he didn't even know he had, living moments that were worth more than all the million-dollar contracts he had ever closed. At night, when he dropped Sophia and Helena back home, Ricardo drove slowly to his apartment. São Paulo's traffic remained chaotic. The city lights continued flashing incessantly, but everything seemed different to his eyes. He no longer saw just concrete and asphalt. He saw opportunities for connection, human stories, life pulsing at every corner. Upon arriving home, he didn't go straight to bed as he used to. Instead, he went to the office and opened a drawer he hadn't touched in months. Inside was the framed photo Sophia had shown him on that first day, the photo of Helena with her as a baby. He had asked for a copy and Helena had generously given it. Ricardo placed the photo on the shelf, next to more recent ones. Sophia blowing out the candles on her 8th birthday, the three of them together in Belo Horizonte, her end-of-year graduation at school with him and Helena sitting in the audience. His phone rang. It was a message from Sophia. A photo of her already in pajamas making a funny face with the caption, "Good night, Daddy. I love you." Ricardo responded immediately, "Good night, Princess. I love you more." A few minutes later, another message, this time from Helena. "Thank you for everything today. Sophia won't stop talking about you. You're doing a great job." He typed and deleted several responses before finding the right words. "Thank you for giving me this chance, for giving us this chance. Good night, Helena." Her response came quickly. "Good night, Ricardo." The next morning, Ricardo woke up with a clear purpose. He had an important meeting scheduled weeks ago, but it wasn't about business. It was about life. He dressed calmly, had coffee, and drove to the East Zone. When he arrived in front of Helena's house, she was on the porch, watering the plants. "Ricardo, did something happen?" she asked, surprised by the unexpected visit. "Nothing bad happened. I just needed to talk to you in person." She invited him in, and they sat in the small living room, so different from Ricardo's luxury apartment, but so much more welcoming. He took a deep breath and began. "Helena, these 6 months have been the most important of my life, not because of the deals I closed or the money I made, but because of the family I found again, because of the daughter I met, because of the woman I came to admire again. And I know we have a complicated past, that I caused a lot of pain, that 20 years don't just disappear. But I also know that what we are building now is real. It's true. I know, Ricardo, and I value that. So I want to make you a proposal. Not of marriage, not yet. We are still rediscovering each other, and I respect the time you need. But I want to propose that we commit to trying. For real. Not as two strangers who share a daughter, but as two people who once loved each other, and who maybe can love each other again in a different, more mature, more real way. Helena remained silent for a few seconds, processing his words. And what would that mean exactly? It would mean we give ourselves a chance, that we date again, but this time as adults who know the value of things, that we build something together, not out of obligation or for Sophia, but because we truly want to. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, we remain dedicated parents and respectful friends. But we try. Helena stood up and walked to the window, looking at the street where Sophia was playing with the neighbors. When she turned back to Ricardo, there were tears in her eyes, but also a smile. I accept your proposal, Ricardo. Let's try. He stood up too, walked to her, and for the first time in 20 years hugged her for real. It wasn't a passionate or desperate hug. It was the hug of two survivors who finally found peace, of two people who chose, consciously, to give the future a chance. When Sophia came running into the house minutes later and saw the two of them hugging, her face lit up. Are you guys dating again? Ricardo and Helena looked at each other and laughed. We're trying, my daughter, we're trying. Sophia jumped for joy and ran to hug them both. I knew it. I always knew you guys were going to be together again. God answered my prayers. And there, in that simple house in the east zone of São Paulo, far from luxury and ostentation, Ricardo Almeida finally understood the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't in the millions in his bank account, the imported cars, or the apartment with the panoramic view. It was in that three-way hug, in those tears of happiness, in that moment of pure human connection. The months that followed were a time of construction. Ricardo and Helena dated with the caution of those who know the value of second chances. Simple dinners at neighborhood restaurants, walks in the park with Sophia, deep conversations about dreams and fears. They rediscovered each other slowly, without haste, savoring every stage. Ricardo's life changed in every aspect. He sold half of his shares in the company and donated a good part of the money to social projects focused on education, especially in public schools like the one where Helena worked. He bought a comfortable but not ostentatious house in a middle-class neighborhood, already thinking of a future where the three of them would live together. And he established a routine that balanced work, family, and, for the first time in decades, care for himself. Sophia flourished day after day. Her grades improved, her circle of friends expanded, and she began taking drawing classes on Saturdays, encouraged by Ricardo, who recognized and nurtured her talent. The girl who once carried the world on her shoulders could now just be a child with every right to dream, play, and grow without worries. One night, almost a year after that encounter on the bench, Ricardo was lying in bed looking at the ceiling when his phone rang. It was Helena. Are you awake? I am. Is everything okay? Everything is fine. I just wanted to tell you something. I love you, Ricardo, again, or still, I don't know for sure. But I love you. Ricardo felt his heart race. He had waited so long to hear those words again. I love you too, Helena. I always have. Even when I pretended I didn't. It was always you. Maybe we're ready for the next step then. Maybe we are. And so under the São Paulo sky, two stories met again. Not as they were 20 years ago, but as they became through trials, errors, forgiveness, and the courage to start over. Ricardo Almeida, the businessman who measured his life in numbers, finally learned that the only numbers that mattered were three: him, Helena, and Sophia. An imperfect family, rebuilt upon the rubble of the past, but solid in the certainty that, this time, nothing would separate them. Because sometimes, the greatest transformations begin with a simple request for help. A child sitting on a bench, a phrase that changes everything, and the courage of a man to admit that he lost everything that truly mattered, and the determination to recover what was still possible. Ricardo discovered that it's never too late to go home, to hug those you always should have hugged, to be who you always should have been, and that true wealth is not accumulated, it is shared. It is not kept in vaults, but multiplied in hugs, laughter, and simple moments that are engraved in the heart forever. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Ricardo, Helena, and Sofia has touched your heart deeply. If you were moved by this journey of transformation, starting over, and love, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment marked you the most. Every day we bring intense and true